Saturday, everybody, and welcome to an all-new edition of Box.Buzz Radio with Editor-in-Chief, Mr. Lee Cleveland. Guys, before we introduce our featured guest this afternoon, we do have to remind everyone that the show is brought to you by Box.Buzz or FightSaga.com. Guys, for all the latest boxing news, go to your centralized hub, linking in all major boxing news wires. Box.Buzz, Box.Buzz. Guys, but this would not be an episode of Box.Buzz Radio without the counsel of our very good friend, the editor-in-chief of FightSaga.com, the one and only Mr. Lee Cleveland. Lee, how the heck are you, brother?
I'm doing great on a Saturday evening, ready to talk boxing, man.
Oh, boy, a lot's happened since last time we went off the air. The last time we discussed the sport, last time we convened, it was the day before the big fight, Lomachenko versus Lopez. And, boy, what an amazing event. Lee, did you expect to see that kind of result? And two, did you expect to see those kinds of ratings peaking at 2.89 million and averaging 2.72 million during the main event of the evening?
Well, as far as the result, I knew it would be a good, tough fight. I'm a little surprised Lopez looked as good as he did, and was able to do what he did against the great Lomachenko. So I'm surprised at the result. But at the same time, I figured Loma would start a little early, start late, which he did. And but I didn't anticipate him sort of just disappearing the first 6 rounds. I didn't expect all the inactivity the first 6 rounds, total inactivity. Minus a little bit in round 2. So that was a bit of a surprise. But I like the decision. I had it 116-112 for Lopez. No problem with the decision. As far as the ratings, I'm enamored at the ratings. They were great, especially considering some of these other sports ratings. Oh, they're awful, Joseph. We'll talk about we'll hypothesize about how those ratings came to be. But I'm begging for at least 1 million, and now. Come to find out, it peaked at, 288 or 288 million. That's great. That's excellent. Great for the sport.
Yeah, it's funny. We were actually saying, we hope that it gets around 1.1, 1.2 million. And it's absolutely incredible, guys. And we're devoting an entire segment to just the ratings. In our theory, there are speculation as to what factors played into the success on the Nielsen's rating or media research. But, Lee, this is, when you think about, obviously, and the reason why I bring up the ratings now, though, is because that has everything to do with the fact that it's no mystery, and it's no surprise that Bob Arum and ESPN now are talking about a potential rematch. But there's only one hitch in that strategy. Well, Teofimo doesn't seem to want any part of it. Now I'm going to read you his quotes, right? What he said when asked about a rematch to TMZ Sports. Right? It was reported by TMZ Sports, and he said this, quote, "For what? F him. I won fair and square. I not only beat him at his own game, but being off for 10 months and fighting the guy people said was the best pound for pound. I went up to him after the fight and I said, good fight. I grabbed his father. I said, safe travels. Pretty much saying goodbye to them because I knew I had won at that point. But he didn't want to give me back that same gesture. Instead, he started laughing like, what am I doing here in the corner? So I was like, whatever. I did my part. The fighting's done. I whooped your ass. You cut me. You headbutted me and shit, but that's fine. That just shows what kind of champion he really is. I'm the king now. I've always been the king. I was just the underground king before, but now I've been crowned," end quote. You know what's funny about this? He seems a little put off that Lomachenko was less than maybe as respectful as Lopez wanted him to be. But correct me if I'm wrong, I don't remember Lopez ever showing Lomachenko any respect over the past 2 years in lobbying for this fight. What's really going on here in your mind, Lee?
Well, he took it well beyond promoting the fight. I mean, Lopez made it personal. He really made it personal. Talking about Loma, talking about his dad, and they both talked a bunch of stuff. So, obviously, yeah, Loma's, not only did he lose, okay, but not only are they upset because he lost, but they're also upset because they lost to this guy that was talking so much, to so much smack, and someone that made it personal, someone that hurled insults. This was really, really personal. It wasn't one of these things. And that Joseph, I'm not surprised, not at all. I figured that after the fight, one guy would be happy, one guy would be upset, but I knew that I kind of anticipated them not to shake hands or anything because it was that personal. Sometimes you have these conflicts, you have these matchups where it's a grudge match, and these guys really don't like each other, and they're not just going to shake hands. Sometimes it's for the promotion. Most of the time it's for the promotion. Sometimes it isn't, and this is the case. So I'm not surprised at all that Loma wasn't wasn't friendly after the fight, for those reasons.
Yeah, indeed. Well, yeah, this puts a huge damper on the plans of ESPN and Bob Arum, because obviously when you think about how poor the ratings have been across the board, right, with other sports, I mean, you look at the finals of the NBA, right, only doing 5.6 million in the final game of the NBA Finals, right, in Game 6. And, yeah, that's down considerably. I mean, it's down from 18 million to 5 million. That's a huge drop-off. And then when you look at the, let's take a look at the percentages, right? Yeah, you look at the MLB, which was, 9 million?
9
the World
million
Series, the first. Yeah. Go ahead. Lowest it's been since
the
when?
Lowest rated World Series since they've been ratings since the 1968. The least.
Yeah, that's when Nielsen Media Research was actually founded. But yeah, you look at Stanley Cup Final, did less than Lopez-Lomachenko. It's down 61% from last year. And this is not just, the Preakness Stakes. You look at all three Triple Crown events in horse racing, they're all down around 50%. College football regular season, down 30%. NBA playoffs as a whole, down 37%. The U.S. Open tennis, down 45%. U.S. Open golf, down 56%. So why was this event so successful, Lee?
Hard to say exactly why, but I've got some ideas. I've got some thoughts. For starters, I think it came on so late. The main event, which really peaked, came on, I think it was 11:53 Eastern time, very late. So just like one of my buddies, casual fan, wasn't going to tune into that, but this came on after the big college football game, so we decided to tune in. I think that sweet spot that we talked about, that 11 to 1, maybe 10 to 12 Central Time, 11 to 1 Eastern. That's sort of a sweet spot where there's not a lot going on. People are still up because it's a weekend. I think we hit that time. So we weren't competing with the team sports, and that was huge. Number one, people wanted something else to watch after the football game or after the basketball or after the baseball game. Number two, it's a theory that because some of these sports have half seasons, and in the case of college football, it might be a full season, but just some of the team, some of the conferences are playing, some are not. So it's it's harder to get involved or get into the MLB or the NBA or college sports this year. But that doesn't really explain tennis or golf. It doesn't explain the Preakness. So
we'll
get
into this a little more in depth in just a bit, but because of the success of this event, well, and as was reported last week on this show, after speaking with Carl Moretti from Top Rank, well, he told me that both fighters, the real reason why there was no rematch clause in the contract was because both fighters, win or lose, wasn't planning on competing at 135 any longer. Teofimo was planning to move up in weight because it's becoming increasingly difficult to make the lightweight limit. And Lomachenko feels more comfortable at 130 pounds, so both fighters, win or lose, were going to abandon the titles and move in opposite directions. But after the big success of the ratings, after the discovery from Nielsen Media Research that it outperformed the NHL Stanley Cup, that changed everything. All of a sudden, you see reports of a Lomachenko shoulder surgery, an injury. Oh, he's good. And now all of a sudden, uncharacteristically, you're hearing Lomachenko come up with excuses, wanting a rematch. This is all by design from Bob Arum. But, like I stated, there's one small hitch in that. Teofimo Lopez is stating that he doesn't want to participate in a return bout. Good or bad idea? Do you think Bob will eventually, take his version of Luca Brasi and and give Teofimo and his dad an offer he can't refuse?
Of course. That's still his biggest fight right now. That's still his biggest fight as far as attraction, as far as money. Loma versus Lopez too. So for financial reasons and some pressure from Bob, sure they're going to take the fight. Of course they will. And it might be tough making weight, but of course they will.
Yeah. So why do you think Lopez is espousing? Why do you think Lopez is espousing this rubbish at this time? Then, what's the purpose of this? What is this for?
Well, he's playing hard to get. Just like that girl, the girl you want to date, she's playing hard to get. Lopez is playing hard to get, hoping for the offer sweeter, hoping for he's sitting back, waiting for that sweet offer. He doesn't want Top Rank to think that he's in the bag yet. Not in the bag yet. Just letting you know. And so Top Rank is going to sweeten that deal, sweeten it. They're going to come to him with probably a very sweet first deal. He might reject it. They might come to him with a slightly sweeter second deal. Like, okay, I'll take it. But I think it's all a ploy. All a ploy to get more money and have more leverage for the rematch. And when I see leverage, I'm not talking about just money. I'm talking about they might want to negotiate ring size. They might want to negotiate ring flooring, what the flooring is going to be like. As you know, there are a lot of little things that they can negotiate. The location. So he wants more leverage. Money.
Indeed. Venue as well, lion's share of the purse. Yeah, but he'd better be very careful because Bob Arum, you don't jerk that man around. I mean, look at what happened to Mikey Garcia's career. And it doesn't seem like it's working out too well for Canelo Alvarez either. I mean, like I stated, and it didn't work out for the band leader in The Godfather when Vito Corleone took Luca Brasi. At first, what started out being a $10,000 check in The Godfather, it turned out to be only a $1,000 check, and Vito pretty much told him that either his brains or his signature would be on the contract.
Hey.
Obviously, that's not going to happen. But when Mikey Garcia turned down and said no to, the hand that feeds him, HBO, when he said no to HBO, wanted more money than Yuri Orkis Gamboa several years ago. What did Bob Arum do? Said, you're not going to embarrass me to HBO. And he put him on ice for the next 2 years. Al Heyman had to buy him out of his contract after almost 2 years of being on the shelf. Lopez isn't Floyd Mayweather Jr., and even Floyd Mayweather didn't pull this stuff. When Les Moonves sat down with Floyd Mayweather and said, hey, what can we do to make this Manny Pacquiao fight happen? Because we need this one. This is why we signed you in the first place. It's not going to look good, and it definitely isn't going to end well for you, Floyd, unless you put this fight together. Why don't you make the network happy? And I can see the same thing happening here. Because when you think about it, Lee, they got a bargain, okay? Because it's funny, Fox, do you know how much they pay the MLB to show baseball games Friday nights, the All-Star Home Run Derby, the All-Star Game, and the entire postseason? They pay them
how much?
$250 million per year.
Ooh.
So when you think about ESPN, right? And they got a $3 million event, a $3 million rating event, right? For only $4.75 million. That's a bargain when you're talking about mainstream sports on television. So think about this. Bob Arum could be able to sell this event, right, because of the success of the first one. Second one's going to be even bigger. They usually are. More people know about it. There's added drama from the first bout. The second one usually is bigger. They could ask for anywhere up to $9 or $10 million for this one. And this could be on. Do you think, Lee, that this is going to start a positive trend for all promoters and major networks in boxing?
No, I would hope it. I hope it would. But an immediate trend, no. I mean, boxing is boxing. Someone's going to color outside the lines. You can't expect things to work out because it's boxing. But maybe down the road, years from now, yeah. But I can't see. Things just don't happen like that in boxing, where things just kind of flow. Like a domino. It's like everything kind of falls in line, right?
Damn it!
But this might start. This might be the beginning of something. But it's not going to be the end-all, be-all. I mean, there's still going to be a lot of rough roads, a lot of obstacles, a lot of promoters doing crazy things. We're going to have successes, but we're going to have failures, and a lot of failures that we're going to have could have easily been avoided if they would have done A, B, C, and D. So, but this is a good start. This is a great start, especially considering how all these other sports are tanking right now.
Yeah, I tell you what, congratulations, though, to ESPN, Top Rank, to both fighters for scoring such a huge commercial and critical hit. Last thing I'd like to address in this, Lee. You know what's funny? And speaking with Bill Kaplan, Hall of Fame publicist, currently working for Golden Boy as well as a bunch of other fighters, former publicist for George Foreman, I asked him, I said, what makes the sport of boxing so appealing to you? And he said, because there is never a shortage of stories. People love the backstories. I think a huge part of what determined the success of this past event, this last weekend's event, was the brilliant Blood, Sweat, and Tears docuseries. Whenever, and HBO and Ross Greenberg were always really good about that, creating the 24/7 series, the Countdown series specials, and this was a page right out of that book. And I think, when you put that together with like you said, the late start time where it didn't really compete with Astros versus the Tampa Bay Rays, the ALCS, as well as Georgia versus Alabama. It didn't really compete with that because the main event, when you look at the numbers, the main event started after those, and it was a huge rating spike. Like when you look at the overall event, the bottom portion of the event only averaged 1.5 million viewers, and during the main event of the evening, it averaged 2.7. Yeah, I think the docuseries, all of the promotional items, right, that was paid for and generated by ESPN and Top Rank. When you look at that, I think whenever you put that much time and effort in promoting an event, and it's easily accessible, it's on easy access with mainstream, regular, free ESPN, I think you put all of that together, and yeah, it was. I think its success was imminent. Your final thoughts on this before we move forward, sir?
Exactly. I couldn't agree more. I also think that I think two more things quickly. Boxing is underestimated. It's always that sport that's underestimated. People have, for the last 100 years, boxing has been quote unquote dying. It's that sport where it doesn't get enough credit. I mean, so people do like boxing. People love boxing. We haven't seen some of the numbers for a lot of different reasons, but people still like the sport, number one. And number two, we're looking at this was free. So when you put a great product like boxing with, two great champions in the ring, at a great time, and it's free, people will tune in. No, we can't go head-to-head with college football, but people like the sport enough that they will definitely tune in if you make it easy for them. And lastly, I think that the bounce that you get from not had this been on pay-per-view, you would have had all those numbers on streaming. Now, because it's on, a lot of the people, well, hey, it's on ESPN. I've already got cable. Who needs these illegal streaming links? I'll just watch on ESPN. So I think we saw a lot of that too.
Yeah, indeed. Last thing I want to ask you, though, because to be honest with you, man, I think, I have this weird feeling, and as much as I would like to think that Lopez and his father are wise enough and intelligent enough to do ESPN and Bob's bidding, I have this strange feeling that they're not that sharp. They're not that business savvy, Lee. I have that feeling that they're actually going to fight Bob on this. And perhaps they're being honest when they say, yeah, we really don't want this rematch. Maybe they can't make 135 anymore. Maybe it's become that difficult. Maybe they just don't feel comfortable at this weight anymore. But, when you listen to Teofimo Lopez's disparaging remarks in the post-fight press conference about Bob Arum, and he said, look, man, they wanted me to lose. They were totally pulling for Lomachenko throughout this entire process. That was their boy. They even showed me, hey, when you lose, these are the fights that we're going to have mapped out for you. That just goes to show you that they wanted me to lose. I don't understand this, Lee, because to be honest with you, it's not going to end well for him if he truly believes all of this rubbish. Do you think he's just saying this just to do you think he's just creating this chip on his shoulder, and do you think that's just what they do and it kind of motivates them? Or do you think they honestly believe this nonsense that the promoter who went out of his way to give them a signing bonus right out of the amateurs to cultivate and nurture their career, to get them on this platform, to get them the fight that he wants? Do you really think he believes his own nonsense that Bob Arum and Top Rank prefer Lomachenko over him?
Yes, because they want to believe it. They want to believe it, and that's what we see. We see this in politics. We see this. It's a lot easier to believe something if you truly want to believe it. It's a lot easier to believe something. If you really want to believe it, then you fool yourself into believing it. They believe it. So, because they want to believe it, and they want to believe it because they like having that chip on their shoulder. They, it's that really ignites them, Joseph. That puts a spark under them. Like, they love being the underdog. They kind of love being the bad guy. I think that I think Lopez probably trains harder. Lopez Sr. probably motivates his son more when he's like, yeah, they don't like you, man. They don't like you. They don't think you can do it, man. So they want to believe this because it really helps. It motivates them, I think.
Well, let's just hope their management team can actually talk some sense into them. Because, yeah, it's not going to end well for Lopez if he doesn't do the bidding of Bob Arum at ESPN. That's just the way it goes, brother. But, guy, tell you what, moving on. Well, first of all, Lee, how did you score this fight? Because there seems to be a lot of, controversy among fans, among critics, and even Bob Arum thought Julie Letterman's card of 11 rounds to 1 was absolute nonsense. How did you score this fight, brother?
Yeah, I scored it 116 to 112 for Lopez. Lomachenko just took way too long to get started. And this, this second round that Tim Bradley and Andre Ward were talking about that was apparently so good for Loma, I don't think so. I'm not saying that he didn't win the round, but I don't see him with his dominant or amazing performance in round 2. I mean, that round could have gone to Lopez, depending on how you looked at it. So, 116, 112. As far as Julie Letterman, that was surprising. That was shocking. But, hey, Lopez got off to a good start. Thank goodness it didn't affect the outcome of the fight. Lopez got off to a great start. He was landing these thudding punches. He was planting his feet, throwing hard. Even the punches that were blocked, they were being caught and they were being parried. Even those punches sounded like you get that thudding sound, right? There are a few times you had Lomachenko against the ropes where you look kind of vulnerable. So the optics, especially the first 6 or 7 rounds, the optics weren't too good for Loma. So I'm not defending her card because I think it was a terrible score, but based on the optics, especially early on, maybe she just gave the benefit of any doubt going forward to Lopez. That's not an acceptable score, but I'm trying to rationalize it. I really can't. But it's
no. We appreciate it, and trust me, Lee. I'm not like some fan on Twitter. You don't have to explain yourself to me, brother. That we know that you're not trying to defend Julie Letterman. You're just trying to make sense of it.
Exactly. Just trying to make sense. Well, why? What was she thinking? Trying to get in her head. What was she thinking by giving him all those rounds? I just don't know. I mean, but again, all I can do is surmise, and that's just what I did.
Yeah, well, Mike Coppinger of The Athletic, he just stated, he was reporting this, right, the day after the fight. And this is what Bob Arum said on Twitter. Lopez won 7-5 is the way I scored it. I can see 8-4. That's a possibility. But you can't score it 11 rounds to 1 and say you watched the fight. The 9th, the 10th, the 11th. It wasn't even close. I would advise any fighter that I have to ask for the commission not to appoint Julie Letterman for any more big fights and top-ranked cards. End quote. And Terrence Crawford had this to say about it. 119-109, ooh-wee. That was a good fight, but that score is so disrespectful. Yeah. Most people seem to be in agreement.
People have bad.
Go ahead, sir.
If there was a trend, I'd understand. But Julie Letterman has had far more good nights than bad. She's been solid over the years. She's been very good, very respectable. People have bad nights. I don't judge someone off of this one night where it was just, who knows what she was thinking. Maybe she just saw a completely different fight. Who knows? But people have bad days. Don't judge her off of this. Now, if this becomes a trend, different story. But out of all the hundreds of fights that she's done, I'm not going to pick one and say, okay, I'll never have her again. I don't think that's fair.
Well, I'll tell you what is a trend.
Because then you might get some rookie or some amateur who really can't score in her place.
Well, I'll tell you what is a trend.
Letterman, okay, well, we'll have John Doe rookie here who really can't score, right?
Yeah.
So,
well, like I said, I'll tell you what is a trend, Lee. And it's not just Julie Letterman. It's across the board. Customarily consistent judges being very inconsistent in their scoring. And I think what you stated earlier hit the nail right on the head. Because it's in a cavernous hall rather than an arena filled with a ton of fans that absorb a lot of the sound, because it's just science. It's acoustics. Yeah, the sound of those big heavy punches, even though they're hitting arms, it's going to feel and sound a lot bigger and a lot more impactful, a lot more, there's the word, consequential to the judges that are sitting right there in the ring apron. Could you imagine? They can feel everything right there on the ring apron. Can you imagine how much more impactful they feel and sound without any fans in the venue? I think you hit the nail right on the head. I think that's causing, because you get boom. I mean, it almost sounds like Teofimo Lopez is hitting a bass drum, right? I think that's a huge factor. Your thoughts?
Well, yeah, could be partially, but I've always said through the years, I've written numerous articles about this. I think the crowd is a factor too, where you've got the roar of the crowd, where you have in one case the crowd goes wild over someone that misses, and the crowd's silent when someone lands, and then you always say, well, were they influenced by the roar of the crowd, thinking that a fighter was doing a lot more or a lot less than what he was really doing? So I understand that, but I guess we'll have to see how things play out, JH. We'll have to really do. I mean, we'll have to really see, because we'll have to see how things play out. Because again, when this all started, I thought, well, it would be great for scoring because you wouldn't have the roar of the crowd. The roar of the crowd getting behind the A side, or just a crowd just roaring at anything, But who knows? Who knows? We'll have to wait and see.
Because this is a big problem in boxing. It continues to be a big problem in boxing, Lee. To be honest with you, I even though Andre Ward scored the fight a draw, which I didn't think it was a draw, it was still a lot closer than Julie Letterman's. And to be honest with you, I would much rather have retired fighters scoring these fights than someone like Julie Letterman, someone like Lou Moret.
Right.
I would much rather have. Why aren't there? I mean, so let's, can you think of a solution that would help improve the seemingly antiquated scoring process in boxing? Because I can think of maybe a couple. One, and this would be a nice pension for these retired fighters, these brave warriors, man, who risk their health for our entertainment. When they retire, have them work for the WBA, have them work for the WBC, these state athletic commissions, have them work for these factions, and have them score fights on every level of the sport, the club, the mid-range to the elite level events. Have them score fight cards, because they would do most certainly a better job than a lot of these guys. Either that, or start to put 5 judges on the ring apron and eliminate the 2 widest scores either way. That would pretty much cancel all of the terrible scorecards, I think. You have 5 judges and you eliminate the 2 widest margin cards, right? What do you think of those?
Yeah, I think those are great ideas. Those are great ideas, and your other idea of scoring 10-10 rounds, even rounds, is also a great idea, because there are a lot of rounds in boxing. In a 12-round fight, you could have most of the time 3 or 4 even rounds. Well, why give those rounds to someone that doesn't deserve a round just because you have to give it to someone? Just make it even. Just make those 4 rounds even, and then when someone decisively wins a round, give that fighter credit for winning that round. But if no one takes it, and we see this a lot of time in round one, this feeling out process where they're just trying to feel each other out. Well, score 10-10. Because
that is a very insightful point. And
you don't deserve
because
the round.
You would hate those uneventful rounds to determine the winner of the event.
Right. We typically give it to the A side, right? But nothing happened in that round. So make a fighter work to win the round. Show me something. Show me you won the round. 10-9. Boom. But if these guys are just going back and forth, kind of pawing at each other, feigning, well, don't give it to one fighter. And some people might say, oh, well, this guy, nothing. There's no action, but this guy was more aggressive. Or there was no action, but I like his ring generalship. No, there was no action. Or if they're killing each other equally, make it 10-10.
Indeed. Yeah, it's something has to be done, though, brother. Because to be honest with you, I am sick to death of this being a big problem in the sport and plaguing these otherwise brilliant fight cards. Sick to death of it. Well, on the other hand, though, it just creates a greater sense of urgency to these fighters to try and handle their business by way of knockout. Take more calculated risks in the ring. I don't know. Your final thoughts on this, brother, before we move forward and talk about Floyd Mayweather's diatribe about too many belts.
Well, that's a good point. And to your point, what Loma said after the fight, where they asked him, hey, man, like, you knew you were winning the fight. Why did you go out there, fight him toe-to-toe? Why did you try to knock him out in that last round? Why not fight safe? He's like, look, I don't want to leave it in the judges' hands. I have no idea what they're scoring. So to your point, Joseph, and when we saw him, and he went right out there and tried to knock him out in the 12th round, and had him buzzed, late in the round. So if there's any good out of this, it's, these fighters are going to fight harder, not knowing what the heck is going to, what verdict is going to come up.
Indeed. Well, I tell you what, hopefully we start to do the sanctioning organizations as well as the state athletic commissions start to actually take action to help improve this entire process. And
right.
And we understand it's a very subjective process, but still there's a lot of quality control that needs to be done and can be done to help ensure the best scoring possible. I'm sorry, you have something else to add, Lee.
Imagine if you and me are judges, and we judge like 200 fights. You can't tell me there are going to be one or two fights where we were an outlier, right? Out of 200 fights, there are going to be one or two fights, if we're judges, where we were an outlier, where we had a Julia Letterman-like score. I mean, I think it's just going to happen, and so that's why you've got to bring in some of these the ideas that we talked about, like maybe former fighters. Well, no, even a former fighter will have an outlier or two. So I think a 10-10 scoring will solve a lot of those problems, because
or what, maybe this is a solution, because the judges often, if they're scoring the main event, they're also scoring other fights on the fight card. If it's a fight that's this consequential and this important to the health of the sport, don't have them work any other cards. That creates, or any other fights on the card, because that creates some mental fatigue, possibly.
Maybe, possibly, but at the end of the day, I think you're going to have bad nights. It's like you have 200 football games and Tom Brady starts. He's going to have a game where he throws 3 interceptions. It's just going to happen. If you play enough games or judge enough fights, you're going to have a bad night.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'm sure that we'll be discussing this topic once again. Unfortunately, brother. So I'm sure we're going to revisit this in future shows. But guys, let's move on because we're running out of time. Let's go to Floyd Mayweather. Well, obviously Floyd Mayweather is he's promoting his own event. That's taking place next Saturday night on Halloween in San Antonio, Texas at the Alamodome. Earlier this week, Lee, Floyd, he went off at the Gervonta Davis media workout. He just took the mic, took over the conversation or the interview, and just went off. And it's funny, and it's being reported that Mayweather really took these sanctioning organizations, this belt issue, he really took them to task. But to be honest with you, if you listen to the entire interview, it was a largely unintelligible just rant that seemed very spastic and irrational.
Yes.
All because, well, and I'll give you my theory as soon as I finish reading this, right? Here were his thoughts, though, that were actually heralded by most people within the industry. Quote, I want to say this right now about the sport of boxing, and I want everyone at home to hear me when I say this. A belt, and this goes for any company. I don't care if it's Top Rank. I don't care if it's Golden Boy. I don't care if it's Mayweather Promotions, if it's PBC. There's just too many champions of the sport of boxing right now. Too many champions. It's not such a thing as super champion. Not at all. I'm not taking nothing away from no fighter. It's too many belts. But there's no such thing as a super champion. What the hell is a super champion anyway? End quote. Yeah, basically he's criticizing the idea that, because keep in mind, last year, Gervonta Davis's last event in Atlanta, Georgia, right, in which he fought Yuriorkis Gamboa in his only fight at 135 pounds, it was for what he thought was the WBA lightweight championship. Well, it turns out that it was just for the regular title, and Lomachenko was the real super WBA title, right, championship. Mm-hmm. So he feels a little slighted that, well, he had to pay, and his fighter had to pay 3% of that purse to the WBA to not be the champion. Mm-hmm. And he's a little upset about that. But you know what? But then again, he and Heyman did sell these fights to Showtime. They just sold. Like, do you really think he has any room to criticize the sanctioned organizations when he seemingly is part of the problem here? Just a month ago, his young lightweight prospect, Rolly Romero, got a gift decision on a Showtime fight card, right? And he took away, right, the interim lightweight championship. So, and that was his fighter. That was a Mayweather promotion fight card. So why would he actually sell that fight and put that bogus title on the line when he knew damn well that his other fighter, Gervonta Davis, was the WBA regular champion? So why is he saying all of this, Lee? And what are your thoughts on his claim that there are too many titles?
Well, I think finally someone like Floyd spoke out. Like, that's been the case for years, man. That's been the case for years.
Yep.
I'm thinking, like, where have you been, Floyd? Where have you been? But as far as the titles, yeah, he just hasn't. He makes a great point. He makes a great point as it relates to his fighter.
Well, right now, let's hold on, brother. Right now, let's stay on that point. Let's address the real reasons why Floyd was actually on this rant a little bit later on. But right now, let's just stay on the belt situation, right? You're a wonderful boxing historian, man, and I love reading your articles on FightSaga.com. Please enlighten us or remind us how we got in this situation in the first place.
Oh, with all the titles?
Yep.
I'll do it as concisely as I can. Yeah, there used to be one champion many years ago, 40, 50 years ago, one champion, and then all of a sudden we had another sanctioning body, another organization. I I think this was like the WBC came, and they became a sanctioning body. And I think a lot of this had to do with fighters not getting an opportunity. So if you have one champion, look, some guys fight every 6, 7, 8 months. If you're a number 5 or number 6 guy, it's going to take you a few years to get an opportunity. So they decided that these other sanctioning body would come along, saying, "Hey, we don't like champions. Two sanctioning bodies, 2 champions." And then years later, someone else comes along, the IBF, says, "You know what? We have a real dispute with the WBA and WBC. We're gonna do the same thing, but we're gonna do it better, and we're gonna have our own champion and our own ratings." Okay, and then you've got 3. And then years later, like, in the 90s, WBO comes along saying, "Yeah, those 3, they're all political, blah, blah, blah. We can do it better. We're going to have our own champion and our own rankings." So that's the early start. Now it's not even enough. Now they want to have a super champion and like a junior champion or a regular champion and a super champion, because they want to get money for sanctioned title fights. So you've got the the WBA heavyweight champion, the WBA regular heavyweight champion. You can get money for that. It's a title fight. But then above him is the WBA super heavyweight champion. He's like the elevated heavyweight champion. And this is just garbage. It's nonsense. It's crazy. It's stupid. It's all financial driven. And then number 1. Number 2, it's still fans to a certain degree, and this may be winding down, JH, but fans to a certain degree like to see that championship label on a fight. It makes the fight more attractive. Okay, the WBA.
Well, networks, and this is the whole reason why
and the network.
You see so many, because networks prefer to televise championship bouts. That's right. Let's read some more of Floyd Mayweather's quotes. So Floyd went on, and like I said, this was like a 10-minute rant that he did, and it was very spastic and very difficult to understand completely. But we'll do our best. And he says, once again, Mayweather, for some reason, he wasn't complaining when this was, when Rolly Romero was competing for the interim lightweight title, right? So he had this to say this past week. Quote, now we look at the lightweight division, okay? And I want to say that the fight the other day, Lopez versus Lomachenko, was a hell of a fight. Congratulations to the winner. He done his job. He went out there and did what he had to do. But if Devin Haney is the WBC champion at lightweight, right, and Gervonta Tank Davis is the WBA champion, now it's safe to say that Teofimo is the IBF and the WBO champion. But I can't knock what he's done, because I have to take my hat off to him, for what he's done. End quote. He goes on to say this once again. He doesn't want to, because let's just be clear, this isn't a fighter's fault.
Yep.
Let's finish reading Floyd's quotes. Quote, I don't want to knock no fighter, but I'm tired of seeing fighters after the fight. Everybody got a championship belt now. Now boxing, all these belts is like trophies, like in the amateurs. The WBC, the WBA, the IBF, and the WBO. Y'all have to clean this shit up. Y'all have to clean this up. This is bad for boxing. Ain't a such thing as no super champion. You guys are just taking extra money from all these fighters, getting extra money from all these sanctioning fees. And this goes for my company as well. We got to clean this sport of boxing up. This shit don't look good. When you look on TV now, everybody's a champion. You see all these fighters posing with a belt, end quote. He's absolutely right about that. Yeah, this is a big problem. I remember, do you remember the good old days when if you won the North American Boxing Federation title, the NABF, or you won the
USBA.
Yeah, when you won the USBA or the NABF, right? That was a huge deal. And those used to, once you won those North American titles, those regional titles, then, that meant that you were next in line. Maybe not necessarily the mandatory, but you were next in line. But I tell you what, talk about the good old days when you won the NABF and the USBA. That was special. That was a big deal. That meant you were in line to get that championship opportunity.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it was a nice little trophy. It was a nice little minor title or subtitle. You know, they weren't parading around like quote unquote world champions, but the USBA, the NABF champions, everyone knew that you were. You know, it was usually a young fighter on the move. Usually like the best of the rest. Usually like kind of like the college basketball NIT champion or something like that. You know. You're like the NIT champion in college basketball, but in boxing it meant that hey, you're on the move, you're gonna get a title fight soon, you're 13-0. It's a nice little trinket to have, but no one considered it a quote unquote world, global, international champion.
Yeah.
You know, you were just recognized as the best of the rest. But a lot of the times, Joseph, an NABF champion wasn't quite next in line. An NABF champion could be like a number 10 or number 9 in a division. So he wasn't always next in line, but it was still good to give a young fighter that distinction because it was a stepping stone. If he was like 13-0, 14-0, nice little stepping stone on your way up. You know, you defend it a few times, then you become too big for it, and then once you become too big for it, then you're starting to fight like the major contenders. You know, the ones and the twos and the threes. So it worked great back then. But apparently, maybe the networks and maybe casual fans aren't impressed by an NABF or USBA champion.
Well, I'm sorry, but to me that still holds more clout than the WBC Latino title.
What
or the WBC Silver Champion.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
That's just nonsense. And once again, Lee, talk about, do you remember in the 70s, in the 60s, in the 80s, where the state championship titles actually had a lot more clout as well? It was actually somewhat of a big deal.
Yeah, I mean, when I was in college, I went to a few local events in Pennsylvania, you know, and yeah, it was a big deal to be the Pennsylvania heavyweight champion. It was a big deal to be the Pennsylvania middleweight champion. And they'd be promoting fights. I'm at a fight. They're marketing a fight a month or two away saying, this is for the Pennsylvania Commonwealth super middleweight title. This guy versus that guy. Like, yeah, those were big deals locally. And people wanted to see, like, who's the baddest man in the state in that division. But today, they just don't seem to hold a lot of water. It just doesn't seem to.
No, and they still exist, strangely enough. Like a friend of mine, very dear friend of mine, is the current welterweight Texas state champion. And there's still titles being offered by the state athletic commissions. But it's hard to call someone the Texas state welterweight champion when Errol Spence is from Dallas.
Exactly. That's part of the downside, right.
But
you
know,
you don't have that. In most states, in 50 states, you might have that problem in 5 states, 6 states. In most states, you don't have that. Like the Montana champion, or even like the Maryland champion or the Virginia champion. Like you're not going to have that conflict. Only in places like Texas, California, New York, places like that. Yeah. For the most part, though, in the high majority of states, you're not going to have that conflict.
So what's the solution? Obviously, we want these guys to get their opportunities. But, so we don't want to go back to exactly the way things used to be and only have one title and someone could go their entire career without getting a major world title opportunity that truly deserves one. We don't want that to happen, obviously. So what's the solution? What's the happy medium, Lee?
I like the idea of having maybe 2 or 3 sanctioning bodies, not 4 like today, but 2 or 3 sanctioning bodies, and then when there's public demand, have champion fight champion, or have a round robin, crown one champion, he's a Ring Magazine champion, and then break up the belts again. So in this case, Lopez would have gotten all the belts. He's the number one guy. He is like the legitimate consensus champion. Maybe he holds on to some, maybe he doesn't. But the bottom line is, regardless, he is the number one champion. But but he's going to move up. So break up the belts again. He's going to move if he moves up to 140, or if he fights Lomachenko again and then moves up, break up the belts again, and then have I would say two to three max champions, and then again, if public demand warrants it, have these guys fight each other. Sometimes, Joseph, it doesn't have to be public demand. Sometimes you could have two champions who just aren't getting to that next level, so they have to face each other to get to get to that next level. They need each other to get to that next level. So sometimes it's not even about public demand. It's about you elevating yourself. But four is too many. I would say two or three, and then again, have them have these undisputed fights every now and then. They're special, and then break them up again. That's the way I see it.
Indeed. Well, as a response to Floyd's diatribe, right? Here's what Mauricio Suleiman had to say on the Sirius XM radio, AK and Barack show, or AK and Barack show. He said this, quote, "From what he is talking about, Floyd, right? From what he's talking about, he mentions the WBC. That's surprising to me, but I understand it. We all would want to have one world champion per division. That's the dream, but it's not the reality. That's been decades of a sport evolving without control. Boxing is the only sport in which the organization has nothing to do with the sport's business. If you look at the NBA, NFL, MLB, and UFC, all those leagues, they control the business. They sell the franchise. They manage the TV contracts and the sponsorship. They do their own rankings, and they do everything. In boxing, it's totally different. In this business, it's only the promoters. The TV networks deal with the promoters, the sponsors, and the sites. What do the organizations do? I can only talk about the WBC, but there are 4 recognized organizations, the WBC, WBO, IBF, and WBA, but there are so many others in reality. The IBO, the IBA, for example, and there's so many more than that. There's between about 20 and 30 different sanctioning organizations. The WBC, now this is where it gets a little ridiculous. Like, Mauricio is great up until this point. Now listen to this, Lee. Quote, "The WBC is not a profit organization. The WBC has 170 countries affiliated with it. We have so many different things that we do outside of the ring. We change the rules. We implement processes. Also, we have been in existence since 1963. We've worked with Muhammad Ali, Mike Tyson, Floyd Mayweather, Julio Cesar Chavez. So many great heroes from the past and today have had that green and gold belt. I have offered to do a tournament of all champions and then have only one fighter recognized as one champion. That is the dream. It could happen, but it would take unbelievable complications to occur. It could happen, but the reality is I just don't see everyone working together. Each organization has an agenda. They have their own rules and regulations. One good thing is it gives activity to more fighters and opportunities, and then it's down to the fans to give the name of one world champion that they recognize to be what they believe the best in the division." End quote. Your thoughts on Mauricio Suleiman's response to Floyd's rant?
Yeah, I mean, it seems like he's trying to be impartial. Some of it's a little what I said. It's almost like baseball or football, like National League versus American League. Let our champion meet your champion. Or NFC versus AFC. Let our champion meet your champion. I'm not averse to that because it does. So having 2 champions, or and then having an ultimate champion for a little while, that's not bad. That's not a bad idea. When he says all the champions, is he talking about like all 20 of those that he mentioned, or just the big four? Number
I'm
one.
sure he's just referring to the big four. Yeah.
But as far as that, it's not. No. So he points the blame at the other sanctioning bodies, but it doesn't stop there. It's also Joseph. It's also the promoters and the managerial teams of the fighters. And I'll give you an example. Let's go back to the Super. Remember that great Super 6? Super middleweight tournament. Lucian Bute was like, nah, I don't think so. You could have a champion who says, it's just not my best interest. We're getting a lot of money as is. We'd rather just stay here. We're not going to participate. So you're going to have a lot of guys like Lucian Bute. And as time went on, we found out why. When he fought Carl Froch, we found out why he didn't want to participate, right? So it's going to be hard getting those fighters to, maybe not the fighters themselves, but the teams, to agree. Because if you're someone like Canelo, you're sitting on Mount Olympus already, why would you want to be one person in a four-person round robin? Like, you're already on Mount Olympus. There's not much you can gain.
Yeah.
So that's the hard part.
And for that matter, Canelo, it's like he doesn't even need any sanctioning organization's approval or belt at this point in this juncture in his career. It's like, why would he need any major world title at this point? Like, does he really have to pay a sanctioning fee? Because he doesn't need that to make money. Neither does Anthony Joshua, neither does Tyson Fury. To be honest with you, when you get to that stage in your career, you can pretty much pull a Floyd Mayweather and pick and choose whoever you want to fight. But here, just like this past Saturday night, if you do that, well, the WBC, they're just all too willing to gravitate towards a big money fight. And, they're going to find a way, by hook or by crook, to tax that event and get that 3% of that purse. They're going to find a way. Yeah, they're not a profit organization, right?
And that's what I forgot to mention. They're very much they're a non-profit, but they're a profit. Like, they're listed as like a non-profit C3 or whatever, but no, officially they're a non-profit. They're a for-profit non-profit organization. Put it that way. Very much for-profit non-profit organization. 501c3 or whatever they call themselves, but it's very much for-profit when you get into the nitty-gritty. So
indeed,
that's one of the reasons too. And also, I think a fighter, people are so accustomed to seeing fighters with belts now. You want to be, if you're Canelo, you want to walk out of the ring with that belt. If you're Canelo, you want to be interviewed with that strap around your waist or on your shoulder. If you're a top fighter, that belt just looks a lot better, man. It looks a lot better. It makes you look a lot better. So I think the sanctioning bodies know that.
Very good, very insightful stuff, Lee, and I'm sure once again we'll be revisiting this, but we have to move on. Let's get to the real reason why Floyd Mayweather went on this rant. And again, he started in, like, if you go back and listen to the entire interview, he's not just criticizing the sanctioning organizations and the fact that there are too many belts. He starts by tearing down Teofimo Lopez's achievement in beating Vasyl Lomachenko last Saturday night. And why? Well, because it's taken the shine away from his event with Gervonta Davis versus Leo Santa Cruz on Showtime pay-per-view. Keep in mind, this was now in front of almost 3 million viewers, and it was on a platform that's a lot more easily accessible for no cost from the boxing diehard fan's wallet. And he started in by this, right? He said, this was from the first part of Floyd's rant. I didn't have to have 500 amateur fights, and he was able to do something that I wasn't able to do, referring to Lomachenko, right? He was able to win 2 gold medals, which is a huge accomplishment. Just going to the Olympics is huge in itself. They say, guess what? He was the quickest to win a world title than any other fighter. man, once you fight 300 amateur fights, you're a professional anyway. But you can't compare a fighter like Lomachenko to me, or a fighter like Muhammad Ali, or a fighter like Sugar Ray Leonard. You know why? Because we won our first fight. We won our second fight. We won our third fight. Hey, take nothing. I tip my hat to Teofimo Lopez. He did a great job. But you have to remember, he wasn't the first one to beat Lomachenko. And Lomachenko already lost to Orlando Salido, end quote. It's nonsense, Lee. His rant is so unintelligible at times.
Right.
It sounds like a spastic young kid who didn't get his allowance from his parents and is throwing a tantrum. So how do you think the success of Lomachenko Lopez, because obviously Floyd is kind of freaking out a little bit and he's really upset, how do you see it affecting Gervonta Davis versus Leo Santa Cruz on pay-per-view for the bargain basement price of $74.95?
Right. Well, Loma versus Lopez was already the bigger fight. It's already the bigger fight. It's already the fight that most casual and hardcore fans wanted to see anyway. Now, the fact that it's the bigger fight and they got it for free, well, then that's a problem. Because now you're going to come up on the 31st and say, well, wait a minute. Now, this is a good fight, Davis versus Santa Cruz. I'm excited, but I watched a better fight. I mean, I watched a more high-profile, more impactful fight 2 weeks ago for free, and now you're charging me, $75, $80 to watch it. No, I don't really know. I can't do that, man. They may have that whole idea where it's like, nah, I'll pass on this one. You guys are ripping me off. Where it's not, I don't think there's no intent to rip someone off, but the fan doesn't know any better, and they're going to think, why is it that I got this other fight for free that was arguably on a higher level, and now you're charging me for this fight? This is just a money grab. Mm-hmm. That's what your casual fan might think, and your hardcore fan, and they won't take it.
Yeah, and the last time this happened to a BBC event, right? And once again, we're going to go to last year in December. In November, Canelo Alvarez, just 2 weeks prior, just like this, 2 weeks before Deontay Wilder versus Luis Ortiz 2 on December 5th, right? Or December 4th. 2 weeks before that, Canelo Alvarez fought Sergey Kovalev on DAZN for the low price of $8.95 per month, something like that, whatever the subscription rate is. And then in 2 weeks after that, well, fans were expected to pay $70 for Deontay Wilder versus Luis Ortiz 2, which is a great fight. Great matchup, and the first one really delivered in a very entertaining and dramatic way. But, yeah, it really had an effect on it seemingly had an effect on the performance, on the number of buys on that pay-per-view. Because it did, I think, less than 200,000 pay-per-view buys for that event, Lee. So you may be right. In your estimation, how do you see Davis versus Santa Cruz? Because Gervonta Davis seems to have a larger mainstream following than both Vasyl Lomachenko as well as Teofimo Lopez at this point in their careers.
I still don't see this fight doing well. Just if it does do well, it's based on Gervonta, and because he's got a lot of momentum right now. But I still don't see this doing much better than maybe a little bit better than the Wilder fight, but not a lot better.
Yeah, I think for all the reasons that you just explained earlier as well, because it's just too close to an event where they saw, and it was a great fight, great event, lots of drama, great backstory. And everyone got to witness it for free. I think that has a lot to do with it. Also, the fact that it's on Halloween, in which you've got two other fight cards that day that are very, very good matchups. that's, I think, going to hinder its earning potential as well. So let's move on, Lee, to the final. Obviously, we're going to review this event on next week's show, talk about the pay-per-view, talk about all the matchups on that card. Guys, we're going to go into this a little bit further, a little bit more in-depth. We're going to examine this further next week. So let's move on to the final topic of the show, Lee, with 15 minutes left in the program, because obviously we're over time, guys. We want to thank you for hanging with us. So we're going to push the end time. Can you hang with us, Lee, till 9 o'clock your time?
Okay.
Very good. Thank you so much for joining us, guys. And the final topic's going to be the new Cruiserweight division, my friend. Or, I'm sorry, Super Cruiserweight division. At the WBC convention last month, the former Cruiserweight world champion was placed in charge, Tony Bellew, in charge of a new committee to investigate Don Mashevsky's proposal to form a new weight class between Cruiserweight and heavyweight. It looks like they've done that, right? So it looks like the new Super Cruiserweight division, Lee, is now going to be underway in just a matter of time, and it's going to be between 200 pounds and 224 pounds. Is this a good idea or a bad one, Lee, in your mind?
I don't like an idea. I mean, on one hand, it makes sense, and I'll start for the pro. It makes sense because these heavyweights are just getting a lot bigger, so much bigger. You know, imagine you go back to the 1930s, 1940s, 1950s. Your heavyweights were like 200 pounds, man. You know, they were like 6 feet, 200, 6'1", 200. Sometimes in the case of Joe Louis, like 192, 195. Now we've got these guys that are like 260, 250, 6'7", 6'8". So on one hand, it makes sense because there's not a lot for a guy that's like 205 or 210 on one hand. So if you're 210 pounds, well, you're too heavy for a cruiserweight, but you're too small for a heavyweight. But the con is that, of course, this creates yet another division. That'll be 18 divisions. And eventually the other sanctional bodies will follow suit, so you'll have 4 more world champions, or maybe even 8 more world champions if you have a junior champion too, right? And the cruiserweight division is not exactly has not exactly been that successful, and I think there's a reason for that. It's just something about, obviously the heavyweight division is a glamour division. Something about the big guys mixing it up, the biggest guys. The cruiserweight division has always been, well, this is the next division below the biggest guys. It just hasn't done that well. And this division won't, I just don't think I don't see it doing that well. Will probably do worse, number one. Number two, as you mentioned when we spoke earlier, you're going to have a lot of guys trying to suck weight, a lot of heavyweights trying to suck weight to be a cruiserweight champion. So you could have a guy that comes in, maybe he makes the 225-pound weight limit, but he enters the ring as a heavyweight at like 240. Well, it just is weird, man. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
It's like you're a heavyweight if you're 240 or 245. Just because you're able to get down in weight. But for the most part, I think it's another division. I just don't think people will be. No one's enamored with the cruiserweight division. We've had some good fighters there, but no one really talks about cruiserweight fights. Why are people going to be enamored with another cruiserweight division? It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I don't understand. And I think you're absolutely spot on, man, when you say that there are going to be a bunch of fatties trying to get that advantage to win that Super Cruiserweight title and just balloon up. It's going to be another situation where you get a bunch of giants because there are no same-day weigh-ins. You're going to get a bunch of fat giants slimming down, cutting weight, and just ballooning up, adding 20 pounds. the day of the fight. I think you're absolutely spot on, brother.
Joseph, I would just say, you know what? Make the cruiserweight division even wider. Maybe that'll bring some sizzle to the division. So it could be like 176 to 214, and then 215 and up can be a or 176 to 210. I think make the cruiserweight.
You know what,
bigger,
brother? You may be onto something because Tony Bellew.
And then they can toot their horn and say, "Hey, you know what? I'm the champion from 176 to 210. That's like 34 pounds. Like I'm the champion. Like in the biggest or widest ranging weight class. Instead of like 160 to 168, 168 to 175. Hey, you're the champion in the widest ranging weight class. That might add some life to that dying division, really.
You know what? You might be onto something because Tony Bellew said the same exact thing. Listen to this. He said this to Mike Coppinger, right? Quote, "The difference in all other weight classes categories is minimal. 4 pounds, 3 pounds, sometimes 6 pounds. The weight jump from light heavyweight to cruiser is 25 pounds. It's just too much. I think we should reduce the cruiserweight limit to maybe 190 and then have the new Super Cruiserweight division from 190 to 220. Your thoughts on that? Sorry for the bad Tony Bellew accent, brother.
He's saying exactly opposite of what I'm saying. That's not what I'm saying. He's saying exactly opposite. I'm saying expand, keep the cruiserweight division, just expand the weight. Just go up 10 more pounds, or maybe even 15 pounds, expand the weight.
Oh, my apologies. I thought you meant,
right.
My apologies. I'm sorry. Go ahead, sir.
So, no, I'm saying exact opposite of Tony. Because that way, the cruiserweight division hasn't been successful anyway. If you make this wide weight, where the division under heavyweight, it's under heavyweight, but it's like 30 pounds, like from A to B, there's a 30-pound difference in the min and max. Well, then these cruiserweights can toot their horn and say, hey, I'm a cruiserweight champion. I'm the champion of the division with the widest weight, with a 30 or 40-pound weight range. And that'll give that champion more leverage. And then I think we could see some really good fights. As opposed to making another division, just make the cruiserweight division, make it larger, make it go up another 10 pounds. So it used to be 190, now it's 199. Go up to 219.9, okay? And then, I think it'd make it bigger, even wider.
That's interesting.
The division's not that successful as it is. So why not do something to make the division more marketable, as opposed to create another cruiserweight division, which one is going to suck and the other one's going to suck less. But they're both going to suck, right?
Well, I tell you what, it's going to be interesting to see what happens. I'm sorry, go ahead, sir.
Why in the world make another cruiserweight division? It makes sense.
I have no idea.
For welterweight or middleweight, but cruiserweight division is already a sorry division. No one even cares. Why not do something to sizzle the current cruiserweight division, which is, I think, expanding the weight classes. Expanding the weight for the current division. That's all I'm saying. That's a
very rational solution for this. But either way, it's for some reason the cruiserweight division has never really caught on in the United States, has it? Now it is heralded in Europe, in Germany, the cruiserweight division is hot. In Britain, the cruiserweight division is hot as well. And we're seeing. Think about this: the former cruiserweight pound-for-pound king, Alexander Usyk, is competing in his second heavyweight bout next week, right? And he would be in this super heavyweight category because in his last fight he weighed 215. Lee.
Right.
And he's fighting a smaller size heavyweight in Derek Chisora anyway, who's only 6'1.5". And so we'll see how it plays out.
Yeah, someone like Usyk, someone when you have an outstanding little guy, will he be able to compete as a full-fledged heavyweight when you have an outstanding little guy? You know, I mean, it just doesn't. All this is kind of crazy. I don't know. I'm very much against another division.
Indeed. Well, I tell you what, we're pretty much at the end of the line, but I do have to give your thoughts on this. And once again, we're going to examine Chisora versus Usyk a little more closely in our final show of the week next week. And that's going to be our big fight preview for all the events coming up on Halloween. But I wanted to ask you something. Do you remember several years ago the he glassed me incident in which David Haye smashed a beer bottle on top of Derek Chisora's head? Do you remember that?
Uh-huh.
Well, now, and it's funny how boxing makes strange bedfellows. David Haye is now Derek Chisora's manager.
That's so crazy.
What the hell, Lee?
That's crazy. It's funny.
The he glassed me incident.
Well, time heals all wounds, right? Time heals all wounds. Remember in the promotion they had to have like a fence between these guys for the promotion? I think they even had like a fence even in the ring before the fight. Like they had to have it was just
and then, now they're working together.
The whole idea of people not sanctioning it. Remember, it was like in BoxRec, it was listed as unsanctioned, and it was a whole mess with these guys.
Oh yeah, good times, brother. Good times. Well, now they're working together, and now David Haye says, "Wow, if we had just joined forces before, boy, Derek Chisora might be a world champion today." David Haye is guaranteeing a victory for Derek Chisora against Alexander Usyk, who is listen to this, who is a 6-1 betting underdog on most race and sports books, right? And I'll say this, and we're going to go into this, like I said, examine this a little bit further, more closely next week, right? Because there's only one guy that I know of that's worse than that's worse than Teddy Atlas in predicting the outcome of some of these fights, and that's David Haye. Whenever David Haye picks someone to win, guys, you put some long green on the opposing fighter. That's the way it goes. But, Lee, we're at the end of the line, brother. We want to thank you for your time, and we apologize to everyone for the technical difficulties. But on the YouTube, like if you go and check out tonight's show on their YouTube platform, on the Warweek Radio Network channel on YouTube, we'll have all of that edited out, guys, so it'll be one continuous show. But, Lee, we really appreciate your time on tonight's program. Do you have any parting shots for our listening audience?
Hey, man, just can't wait to talk next week. And I'm looking forward to Davis versus Santa Cruz.
It's going to be a great event. Guys, and congratulations for all of the winners on last night's DAZN card. And, guys, have fun, and don't forget to tune in to the Litvinets fight, which is being staged, Lee, for the vacant IBF welterweight title. Even though Errol Spence is going to be actually defending his title on December 5th. Yeah. The fight tonight is actually for a world title. Can you believe it?
No. Yeah, unfortunately I can.
But I tell you what, Lee, thank you so much, guys. He's Lee Cleveland. Catch all of his work. Go visit Box.Buzz as well as FightSaga.com for all the latest boxing news, guys. But that's going to just about do it. We want to encourage everyone to keep tuning into the fights. And guys, in case you missed any part of the show, go visit us on YouTube, Warweek Radio Network. Guys, but on behalf of Lee Cleveland, my name is Joseph Herron. Thank you so much for tuning in. Have a wonderful Saturday evening, everybody.